Hey everybody, 4Router Live here with another Keyforge video. This is a bit of a wrap up of my Season 5 of the Australian Keyforge League. For me the season's over. I got knocked out in the group stages, pretty much bombed out completely, ending up only winning one of my matchups out of 5. So it wasn't a great season for me, but I thought I'd do a short video just with some thoughts on how the season went, looking a bit at my decks, maybe some decisions I might have made differently if I had my time again, and talk about the league format that we had this season. So the format for Season 5 of the Australian Keyforge League was different, brand new format. We had Cloggin and Anxious Pirate really driving the league this season, upping our game a bit in terms of professionalism, so it was a really good season to be part of. We played what they were calling the Authoress format. So you picked 2 decks, they had to have a SAS of 80 or lower, and they had to have 6 unique houses, so you couldn't have any duplicate houses between your 2 decks. Now on the face of it I thought that would be fairly straightforward, but actually to pick 2 decent competitive decks with no overlapping houses, certainly for me, I found quite challenging. And I kind of shortlisted a few decks and found it quite tough to pick the 2 that I went with in the end, trying to find a decent balance between them to sort of face different opponents. But overall quite a good format. So then you went into a match and each match was best of 3. You could pick either of your decks to play in each game within that match. You could swap freely, so you could start with one, swap, or stick with the same deck all the way through. Some of my opponents stuck with the same deck all the way through. Depending on how I was going with the matchup, I was swapping decks back and forth depending on how I felt what was going to give me the best chances. So overall, I think it was quite a fun format actually, and it meant you weren't getting decks banned like you are in Triad. So as the player, you were much more in control of which of your decks you were going to play. Your opponent couldn't really affect that, but there was a bit of strategy in looking at your opponent's decks and thinking about what the best matchups and combinations might be and what they might run with versus your deck. So there was quite good strategy up front as well as during the games themselves. So I think the other thing to talk about this season was the upping of our game in terms of merchandising and branding. And again, big thanks to Cloggin and Anxious Pirate for sorting all this out. You can see the logos behind me, the kind of Platforge and Aguirre, and you can see I'm kind of wearing my Platforge t-shirt, which is really nice actually. Very pleased with how that turned out. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see that if I just stand up a little bit, but that's turned out really well. It looks very good. I've got it on green here, and I know a few other players who've been in the league for a few seasons have bought some gear as well. And the other thing is the prizes. So not just the merchandise, but the prizes that were sorted out. The background on the screen at the moment is some unique artwork that the team got done by one of the Keyforge card artists of this Authoress format. So you've got the 2-headed dog from kind of Greek mythology there, and this unique piece of art going to be a very unique playmat for someone who wins the league this season. So good luck to them because the artwork looks absolutely brilliant. And also some unique keys that we're going to have made. So let me just show you properly what this all looks like. So if I move my camera out of the way so you can see things a bit better, look at this artwork. I mean, look at the detailing on the dogs there. I mean, the tails with the kind of dragon head, the pink and the blue lightning. I think this is meant to evoke the kind of two-headed beast, the pairs of decks you and your opponent are bringing. And yeah, looking at it on my really nice computer screen here where you can see all the detail, it's incredibly detailed. So a really lovely piece of artwork and a pretty unique prize someone's going to get. But we also got some unique keys made, so if I just flick through to those, you can have a look with the kind of Aguirre emblem on there. Plastic keys, bespoke made for the league, and I think we've got a number of sets. So I think most people that get through to maybe the final 8 are going to pick these up. So that's the reverse side as well, with the amber on it, and then the forged side with the Aguirre. So pretty brilliant really in terms of what the team pulled together, and really glad to be part of the league this season. Don't think I'll be taking home any prizes for my results, but pretty impressive all round to organise the league this way. New website up and running, and definitely if you're interested in playing, as long as you don't mind playing Australian time, anywhere in the world you can join the league for the next season. I'm sure season 6 is going to be absolutely amazing as well. Now maybe let's have a little talk about how I did, the decks I used, and maybe some thoughts on what I might do differently next time. So flicking up my decks, these are the two that I ended up with. So you can see the sats ratings have changed slightly since the league started, so should have been both under 80. This was 80 and this was 79 when we went into the league. And you can see I've got two decks here. So the Advisor that delights Queens, so let's look at each one in turn. The Advisor that delights Queens, it's a deck I've used before in the league, really happy with it, really like the way it plays. COTA deck, Dis, Logos, Sanctum. And really, what are the highlights here? Well, in this suite, you've got an Arise, Control the Weak, and then you've got a whole load of creatures. So Dust Imp, Guardian Demon, double Shuffles, triple Shula, Stealer of Souls, Toxing, and I'll be honest, the Shulas and the Shuffles, bringing them back with an Arise, multiple steals, there's all sorts of good stuff you can do in Dis. In the Logos, what are the standouts here? Well, it's Mother. It's the double Mother, and that, if you can get them out early, really drives this deck forward. You've got the Phase Shift, you've got the Strangler Storm, you've got a library access, so you might be able to pull something off. And then in terms of Amber Control, you've got the kind of Effervescent Principle there, which is one of the key cards in this deck. And then Sanctum, Doorstep, really good. You've got an Oath of Poverty, which can actually give you a cheeky burst of Amber with the two artifacts in Logos that aren't particularly great, Chaos Portal and Library of Babel, they're fine, but no problem trading them in for 2 Amber. Then you've got Shield of Justice, Take Hostages, a couple of Frankises, you've got a bit of capture in here, Lady Maxina, Radiant Knight, Staunch Knight, so you've got a few bits and pieces in there. Amber control pretty high, and I guess that was one of the themes I went for, looking for decks with reasonably high amber control, a decent amount of expected amber. This deck I like as well because with the mothers, you know, really quite high speed, and I do like decks that move fairly quickly. What are the problems though? Well, you probably have spotted already, no key cheats, no artifact control at all, and I think that proved to be pretty decisive in the league this season, and also no real board wipes. So in terms of board control, really relying on the kind of the big creatures in Sanctum, and to an extent the Stealer of Souls and the Shulas in Dis. They're kind of the big creatures I had on board, but really having to fight to control the board. So probably not ideal in retrospect. The other deck I picked is a Worlds Collide deck, Aguirre the Loudly Muddy, and again a really fun deck. I really like this deck. It's got a lot going for it, and when it fires it really goes off. So here you can see it's Saurian, Shadows, Untamed. Saurian's double Axiom of Grisk, handy. City-State Interest, pretty good for capturing and then axioming. Then this combination here, the 6 Emperor Tyrannosaurus, and then I've got 2 tributes, and that's really pretty gross when you can pull it off. And even just 1 tribute and the 6 Emperor can be a massive swing, you know, from your opponent being in check on a key to them having practically nothing and you well into check on a key. So whether that combo goes off in this deck is usually pretty key to how it runs. Then you've got a few decent sized creatures in Saurian, which again helps with the 6 Emperor, and the big boy, the Grimlicus Ducks. And that's great with the 6 Emperor and the tributes, because you can put it down, it's usually going to be the biggest creature on the board. It exalts twice, then you can tribute onto it, exalt, tribute again, you know, to get your opponent's amber on. You can end up with a disgusting amount of amber on this creature, 6 Emperor it, and it all goes into your pool. Really great combination. Shrix, Philophosaurus. So again, if these get on the board and get moving, then you know, they can really help. Shadows, not as amazing as I think it, you know, you might want. The Ronnie obviously is pretty good. Bad Penny is Bad Penny. At least with the Binders, you can maybe do something with her. Chimera Eclipse, that's been pretty handy. Hawk, that's certainly been key in terms of having some direct artifact control in the deck, so liking that card. Overall though, okay, but nothing special in Shadows, could have been better. Untamed, again, this is pretty good, so double Nature's Call, that certainly gives you the ability to at least return creatures to your opponent's hand if you need to clear some stuff off the board. Fittest, Unsuspecting Prey, could have probably not, you know, 2 Unsuspecting Preys isn't too handy. Harmonia can be good. Molfin I love, the Imprinted Mamook, often a bit of an MVP there, just reducing your key cost. The double Rust Noras, again with some more artifact controls, so that's good. Tantadlin can be a bit of a cheeky one in this deck actually, because with the Tribute 6 Semper, people often forget Tantadlin, and it can be left on the board for quite a while because it's a bit inoffensive unless they've got something in their archives. So I've found quite often it's the Tantadlin that's getting tributed and 6 Sempered in some games, so that's one to watch out for as well. So again, looking at the stats, again, pretty high amber control, that was something I was going for. Decent expected amber, it's got the Hawk and the Rust Noras, and yeah, okay, a customs office to tax your opponent, but they're still going to play the artifacts. Certainly not as fast a deck as the advisor that delights queens. And it's got the board wipes though with the axioms. But again, depends on the matchup as to how effective those are going to be. So how did the stats work out for these decks? I mean, I guess that's one of the kind of key things that people really want to understand. Okay, so let's have a look at how I went overall. So 5 matches in my group, played best of 3, and I went 1 win and 4 losses. So not a particularly great result overall. Breaking that down, I lost 0-2, 1-2, 0-2, then a 1-2-1, then I lost 1-2. So a couple of kind of 2-0 wipes, a couple of losses, and the 1 win there. And generally speaking, they were going pretty decisively, so losing kind of 3-1s or winning 3-1. I guess it's kind of interesting to look at how the 2 decks performed. So again, sorry, just getting up my stats. So I used the advisor that delights queens 10 times, and it had 2 wins and 8 losses. And I used Aguirre the Loudly Muddy 5 times, and it had 2 wins and 3 losses. So again, hard to tell from those stats what to make of it, other than that either I didn't pick great decks, didn't play them well, or didn't really get the matchups that worked for me, but roundly defeated. Aguirre coming out on top, and generally I was picking Aguirre where I could see I needed the artifact control. My first choice deck would have been the advisor that delights queens, if it looked like the matchup was going to allow me to get the most out of it. But if there was going to be a big artifact problem, I pretty much had to fall back on Aguirre the Loudly Muddy and rely on that. I guess some other thoughts having played through with these decks then. Well, Aguirre definitely relies on that Tribute 6 Semper combo, coming at the right time, getting the cards at the right time, playing at the right time to take your opponent off check and get yourself into check to sort of get ahead. It means the amber control's a bit lumpy, like it's really reliant on those tributes coming through to do anything big, and then that one runny. The advisor that delights queens definitely needs the mothers out early. If it gets those mothers on board and they stay on board, that's when the deck really flies along. If you don't manage that, it can be a bit tricky, I've got to say. It can struggle a bit. And I think it really relies on the Sanctum for the board control. I think those were the 2 areas I really felt I struggled with: board wipes and artifact control. So with the advisor that delights queens against decks with decent artifacts, and quite a few people were bringing pretty sick mass mutation auto-encoded decks, just really couldn't stack up against them. I couldn't do anything about the artifacts, and unless I was running really quickly and maybe got out ahead of those artifacts coming out, eventually it just caused me problems. I think the other issue with the advisor that delights queens, no board wipes, so I was reliant on getting creatures on board, having them on board to fight, to clear my opponent's board. And again, there were a couple of games where their board just got totally out of control, and I had no kind of silver bullet to wipe the board and reset things. And really, once they'd got a decent board out, they could pick my creatures off, and I really couldn't get back into the game. So that was definitely an issue there. With Aguirre, yeah, I've got the artifact control. That certainly proved decisive in a few games, being able to pull that Hawk out or using the Rust Noras. The board wipes, I'll be honest, Axiom, I mean, on the face of it, it should be effective, but once you're up against other people who are capturing a lot, and there's quite a bit of Sanctum capture out there, particularly in mass mutation, and also, of course, up against other decks with Saurians in, really finding that it wasn't cutting it, wasn't really allowing me to control the board much. So I could have done with just a gateway to this or something that just reset the board completely, and didn't have that. I think those probably were the two major drawbacks from the decks I took. Not having a key cheat, would have been good to have a way out or a way for some of these decks to win. You know, what's the win strategy with a key cheat that might have just given me the edge to play towards. I certainly enjoyed playing various of those key cheat decks that feel pretty good when you pull it off, particularly if it takes a while to work towards it and build towards it. Epic Quest is probably the one that comes to mind. In previous seasons of the league, I've played a really fun Epic Quest deck and actually managed to pretty consistently pull off the Epic Quest, and it really made the difference in some big games. So maybe next time I think I'd do that as well. But it's really hard, even with a decent sized collection, to find two competitive decks, no overlapping houses, with a good enough balance of amber control, artifact control, board control, and a kind of way out and a strategy and a game plan to win, to really put your opponent under pressure. And I certainly didn't have too much in my collection to look at. Certainly felt at times maybe I should have just gone for raw speed with some kind of rush deck. That could have worked against some of the decks I faced. If we play the same format again, I probably won't be picking these two decks. I might take Aguirre again, actually. I think it's got options in the right matchup. I think the advisor that delights queens, there's just too many ways to work around it. And pretty much every game I played, I was looking at the matchups going, oh, it's going to struggle. So probably should have taken a different deck instead of that. But having said that, and despite only winning one game, losing 4 and crashing out at the group stage, I've got to say it really was a great season of the league. Really enjoyed it, enjoyed all the matchups. Great to have a load of new players in the league as well. Probably the biggest season we've had since we got going online when COVID hit. Great to see the prizes and everyone going for that as well, because I think that's incredible. And definitely a big shout out to Cloggin and to Anxious Pyro, who's done so much work to get the league set up and running smoothly, website, everything looking pretty professional now. So yeah, looking forward to next season. It's going to be interesting what kind of meta we're playing in then. It's the beginning of July when I'm recording this video. We still haven't got Dark Tidings in Australia. We got a few starter sets, and a few of us maybe got 1 or 2 decks from those, and the kind of deluxe Archon decks, but actual display boxes, standard decks, they're not here yet. So we're months behind the rest of the world and really kind of struggling to get into Dark Tidings at the moment and understand the cards. So it might be interesting next season if it kicks off fairly soon. We may only just have got Dark Tidings or not have Dark Tidings, whereas some of the international players in the league may well be well into those decks and have found some pretty nice Dark Tidings decks as well. So I'll definitely be taking part in the league next season. Looking forward to it and hoping to do perhaps a bit better, get into the knockout stages. That's always fun and competitive. But it has been a great one. I hope you've enjoyed watching the matches as I've played through week on week, and I hope you've enjoyed this kind of summary video and a bit of a look back on how I did and my thoughts around the decks I took. So that's all for this season of the league, and I'll be signing off and catching you again soon.